Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with the Average Joe Sports Show, back from vacation. And a word from Mr. Frost.
Mitch Sherman here. We're going to talk about college sports tomorrow. What is that?
Hi, everybody. It's Bill Doleman. After the most tumultuous period in Nebraska athletics history, to quote Kevin Bacon from the documentary Animal House, all is well.
It's Elijah Herbel here. Some changes coming to the Average Joe Sports Show. We'll get into those at the end of the episode.
Back at it, it's the Average Joe Sports Show. Mitch Sherman, Bill Doleman, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt, episode 36. Be sure to like and subscribe to the Average Joe Sports Show, the podcast. Real easy to find, the Average Joe Sports Show on YouTube for video, Spotify and iTunes for the digital download, and AJ Sports Pod for Twitter. Mitch, how was vacation?
Well, thanks for asking. Vacation was so good that, per the norm, I felt like I needed a vacation when I returned from my vacation. But we had a great time. Took the two teenagers out to the great Southwest. You know, a place you want to go with a 13 and a 17-year-old, Las Vegas. So we spent a few days in Sin City with the kids and avoiding the sports books. I had to talk to them about how they're not allowed to set foot in the sports books, but we got to watch March Madness and a few sports bars in Las Vegas, and then we also made it down to one of my new favorite cities, guys, Flagstaff, Arizona.
Yes.
Really enjoyed 7,000 feet elevation. Got some snow, which was unexpected, but apparently wouldn't have been unexpected if I had done any research at all about Flagstaff before we left. And we took a 20-plus mile bike ride around the rim of the Grand Canyon. So some fitness on the trip, too. It was great.
Bill and I found a new cocktail bar in Lincoln.
In Lincoln?
Yeah.
Tell us more.
It's south side of town.
Oh, you told me about this one. Yeah. Schmitty really likes it.
It's got a little bit of 80s flair on the floor. It looks well worn, and still some remnants of a former cigar bar. And Billy D, you walk into the can, and there's old Farrah Fawcett.
Yeah, that was like going back to the 70s. So, yeah, it was a little
life-size poster. You're just sitting there doing your business, and they were staring at you.
So, yeah, it was a nice bit of nostalgia to find that in Lincoln. So while Mitch is out getting exercising around the Grand Canyon and
great father
and explaining to his children not to enjoy all the ills of Las Vegas vices, you and I found a place to go grab a drink.
It sounds like the 80s bar from Back to the Future when they were in 2015, and there was the pinball machine with and Michael Jackson and the Ronald Reagan. Max Headroom was there. Yeah. Is that what we're talking about here, or I'm gonna have to find out more after the show about?
We'll have to take you for a sip, but no, the floor looked a little Vegas inspired with blackjack and cards and poker chips on the carpet. That's what the carpet decor was. A lot of black and white photos of Marilyn Monroe and Hefner's spot out on the West Coast, and. Yeah, our female counterparts went. They loved it. So
okay, that was my next question. Was I was getting a feel from the decor of a combination of misogynistic and eclectic. But if your female counterparts liked it, then I think we can wipe misogynistic off of there. You know?
Yeah.
It's a cool place. It's a cool place. A little step back in time. It has a little Misty's 1970s. Early Osborne era, post-Devaney era, with kind of thought maybe Milt or who else? Some Jim Ross might walk in, Mike Corrigan, that kind of place.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so that's what we did during our little off time.
We weren't biking.
Yeah.
Speaking of Bob Devaney, we haven't talked as a group since the introduction of Troy Dannen as the new athletic director at Nebraska, and I was able to listen to some of that introductory session while I was in the car out in Nevada and Arizona. And there was a Bob Devaney reference. I believe it was Rob Schaefer, the chair of the Board of Regents, looked down at Troy Dannen before he came to the podium and said that he felt like he was looking out at Bob Devaney. So curious what that means.
Little facial recognition similarities.
Is there? Because I have not met Troy yet.
Around the chin, I think.
Maybe stature. I'm not sure I see it either, but okay. Well, we're on days like that when you start thinking nostalgic and the glory days and how this was all built. Okay, let's bring up Devaney's and invoke Devaney's name. And okay, all right.
We're just waiting for a regent fight. I mean, you know.
Could it be one of those? We had a former regent there, and
yeah. I mean, let's go octagon before the presser ended.
Well, it was an important day for Nebraska because for a short period of time there, in the immediate aftermath of Trev Albert's departure, it looked like the Huskers might not be able to be a part of the College Football Super League as we move into the future. The top 80 as some of as came out in the Athletic today. We'll get to that more about that Super League later on, but I will say that in a short period of time, some of which was when we were on a little hiatus, the Huskers went from severe instability with their administrative leadership to back into a place where I think you can feel secure with the hire of Troy Dannen and the appointment as the priority candidate to be University System President of Jeffrey Gold. So take a deep breath, Husker Nation. It was a trying month of March to get the rug pulled out from you the way that happened back on the 13th. But here we are just a few days into April, and things seem to be somewhat stable again. So, and Matt Rule's still here too, so that's good.
Yeah, that's
I think
big.
I think that's the whole key to all this is that Matt Rule said all the right things at that press conference prior to Dannen's on that Monday. I think we really kind of need to refer to that March 18th press conference as that Monday, because I think that was a day that kind of stabilized things around Nebraska because those 72, 96 hours were just crazy from the Trev Alberts. From the time the news broke until Matt Rule came back, Nebraska needed that Matt Rule 13 minutes and the farmer's poem and all of that. So that Monday was a really important, day to stabilize things. And then you get Dennis LeBlanc, who had the greatest, 5-day period of any interim athletic director anywhere. And what a great moment for him, though, as kind of a sidebar. Dennis has been around for so long. I remember when Dennis was an assistant track coach, and to see, him so revered and respected and loved, I thought that was great. But to get the gold nomination, to get Dannen hired, but for Matt Rule to say what he said, it's pretty remarkable how things have, I guess, stabilized. That's the only word I can continue to think of over the past week now since Dannen's press conference. With his presser, good Lord, can we have fewer people speak at those things now, and for less amount of time? But I remember when Bill Byrne came in, and that was an interest. I mean, it was a great hire. I think Bill Byrne's one of the greatest athletic directors in the history of collegiate sports. But that when he came in to bring Nebraska into the 90s and, setting the stage for the 21st century and all that he did, he and Tom were not the best of friends. They existed together. There was certainly an understanding. Don't touch my football program, and I will do everything to help you out with everything else that you have to do in your job. And I think they had that understanding for the 10, 13 years that Byrne was around. I think with Dannen, it is clearly a Matt Rule is the guy. and Dannen is there to make sure that things go smoothly for Matt Rule, and then he will do all the business for everybody else. But clearly, Matt Rule is the king of Nebraska right now.
Yeah, this was. I mean, you can go too far and say like the football coach hired the AD, and that's not the case. But it was clear from hearing from the president, even from the governor, that Matt Rule's input was essential in the choice that Nebraska made to hire Troy Dannen from Washington. I mean, they have the common, very close friend in Pat Kraft, the AD at Penn State, and I think the last time we convened, Bill, you kind of sniffed that out from Rule's March 18th talk and how often the name Pat Kraft came up, and we maybe wondered between us if Nebraska was going to make a phone call to Pat Kraft to see if he wanted to double his salary and move from the east part of the Big Ten to the west or central part of the Big Ten now as we go into 2024. And it wasn't far off base. It was like, okay, you're not going to hire Pat Kraft, but what you might do is hire his best friend in the business, and that's Troy Dannen. So there's the connection there, and Rule knew Dannen before this hire was made, but really who he knew and trusted was Pat Kraft, and Kraft recommended Dannen, and others did too. I mean, Dannen is close to Bob Bowlesby, the former Big 12 commissioner, the former Iowa athletic director. So there's a lot that went into this hire, and it really is stunning, I suppose you could say, that it worked as fast as it did and as smoothly as it did, considering that the University of Nebraska system was in such flux with its primary position of leadership. You had a new president coming in, an interim president beginning his exit, and they were still able to get this done in what, 4 or 5 days. So right. Pats on the back to them for that, and I'm sure this chapter in Nebraska history will be long remembered, and one that all people around the program hope never has to be repeated.
I second that, third that, fifth that, and we're going to have a hiring and firing freeze on head coaches, administrators, and athletic directors. Give me a 5-year stint. Give me a 5-year stretch. Whoa. And just let things. I know that's
unrealistic, Schmitty.
Okay, 3. Give me 3.
I was thinking like you want a moratorium here until the end of the summer. Like that's what we're going for, right? Like,
well, can I ask
let it settle. Let it settle and just everybody go to work.
Can we get back to something simple like conference realignment?
Yeah.
Well, as we talk though about needing the AD talk to settle a little bit, you want some stability in that chair. The topic was thrown around 2 weeks ago. Like, man, does anybody talk about the AD more than the University of Nebraska and Husker fans? Like, and I think there is some credence to that notion that, yeah, Husker fans are a little bit crazy, and yeah, we do talk about the AD a little bit more, but it's kind of with good reason based on what we've seen in the past 20 years with the revolving chair that has been. So I want to pose the question to you guys. Are Husker fans and Husker media crazy for how much we talk about the AD chair compared to other schools in the country, or are we right? Or is everyone else crazy?
Stop having turnover, and there would be nothing to talk about.
Look, I think... I think we got a pretty good idea of how this place really does operate and what is important. And those of us in the sports world have known it forever. And those that have maybe been trying to deny it for the last 50 years or 60 years or whatever since Devaney came in from Wyoming. Football and sports are co-kings with agriculture in the state of Nebraska, right? But look, Nebraska got a new chancellor 9-10 months ago, very much under the radar. Nebraska was looking for a university systems president at a time that there's a $50 million deficit. But, okay, well, whenever you get around to hiring the guy, let us know or the gal, let us know because, it's an important job. We need to get some. Trev Alberts is leaving. Well, what the hell's going on down there? You can't let the AD go. right? I mean, it was you got to keep Trev, and if Trev's gone, we got to get an athletic director. Or Rule's going to leave. I mean, that was that was number one with a bullet. And then it was, well, we got to get that president hired. Do we have a chancellor? Okay, the chancellors, we're good there. All right. I mean, it was DEFCON, whatever, 2, when Nebraska needed an athletic director, and damn it, they got the AD, and then they got the president, and the chancellor's going, I've been here a while. But
first of all, your voice there, I think, was as representative as anything we could ever put together on the feelings that Nebraska fans had over the past several months about these administrative changes. And the fact remains that the only reason that many Nebraskans even knew there was a vacancy at the president's position is because that president was tasked to hire an athletic director last month. Like, we have an interim president. Why is there an interim president? What happened? Oh, he left. He left in October. What? Or at least he announced his departure back last fall. He left in January. Ted Carter did. I would say, to answer your question, Elijah, about whether we're crazy. Yeah, we're kind of crazy in this state about everything when it comes to University of Nebraska football. And really, that's what the athletic director's job, first and foremost, is to be the caretaker of Nebraska football. And there's good reason for it, to care about the athletic director, because you can look at the history. And if you're watching this, the video of this, you can see my hand going up and down, but it's Bob Devaney to Bill Byrne, to Steve Peterson, and then there's a dip, and then it's Tom Osborne, and you start to come back up, and then you have Sean Eichhorst, and there's some mistakes made, and then you have Bill Moose, and there's some good, but some mistakes made, and it's a lot of window dressing, and then Trev Alberts comes in, and things start to trend up again in a variety of sports. So you can see a direct correlation between, I would say, the competence of the man in the athletic director's chair to the successes and failures of Nebraska football and Nebraska sports in general. So Nebraska fans, observers of the program, are not dumb. They see that correlation, and I think they recognize how important it is to have a competent athletic director. And the hope, of course, is that's what Nebraska has obtained again in Troy Dannen.
Well put. Just the old roller coaster, up and down.
It has been a 25-year roller coaster, hasn't it?
Or the stock, keeping an eye on your retirement. The way it's going up and down.
I'm interested how you soft pedal that with the 4-year case of the flu. There was a dip. I think the dip more than dipped. During that time frame, right?
We're referring to Steve here in this.
That's Bill's tag for his era. Yes, the 4-year case of the flu. Ironically, how sick, as we transition from the ongoings that is now settled and air quote stable. Good. to the giant elephant right now that is conference realignment. And Mitch, want to go here with the Athletic and Stuart Mandel's story about this Super League, 80 teams that will be the names and love, but also some relegation possibly. And
this is hypothetical, to be clear.
But it sounds.
It's a proposal, yeah.
Pretty good.
It sounds very interesting, and it sounds viable on the surface. And this is a story that's out on Wednesday night on The Athletic from Stuart Mandel and Andrew Marchand, and they did a bunch of reporting and learned about a group that calls itself College Sports Tomorrow. And in this group are kind of a who's who of administrators and just important people within the college sports world who have devised a plan to completely redo the entire structure of college football. And it's not all of the NCAA. Now, basketball and the other sports would stay within the leagues, as the messed up leagues as they are now. So you're going to tell me this is one of the questions I have about this is you're going to tell me that you're going to take football and put them into some sort of an order that makes sense, but you're still going to leave Stanford in the ACC for basketball and baseball and water polo, and you're still going to leave Washington playing Rutgers in conference games and USC playing Maryland in conference games. So I don't know. I feel like if college football blows up, as far as the way that the leagues are structured, it's hard for me to imagine that all of the other sports that make a fraction of the money that football does are going to somehow stay together in these leagues that are now spread all the way across the country. But that's all secondary. What happens to the other sports? We know that football drives the bus, and this College Sports Tomorrow group wants to bring 70 teams, which is basically all of the Power Five, and then a select group of others, and put them in 7-10 team leagues, and you'd have a playoff system that included the champion from each one of these leagues, and then another 7 or 8 wild cards. You'd have a relegation for 10 teams that come off of the mid-major group and are clumped together with those first 70 teams to form an 80-team Super League. All of NIL, it wouldn't even be NIL anymore. It would just be a salary structure for the football players involved. All of the transfer portal would go under this, the playoff. It would all go under this one roof. So the NCAA is out the window when it comes to governing college football. The problem is, and this is mentioned in the article prominently, these leagues, as they exist now, have signed multi-million-dollar and billion-dollar, in some case, deals with the TV networks that they can't just get out of because there's a good idea out there to restructure. So it would seem that the best case scenario or the soonest case scenario to be able to do this is sometime into the 2030s. But throughout this piece, there's a lot of talk about urgency and the need to do it as soon as possible. Because of these court cases and because of things that are being heard in the U.S. House of Representatives. So there's a lot of hoops to jump through, a lot of knots to untie. I think in the end, the TV networks are going to win, as they almost always do, and there's going to have to be some kind of an agreement reached to include them so that they can make as much money as they are now, if not more, or the thing's going to be dead in the water.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be a situation where those TV contracts are maybe they look for those places where they wrote the stipulations down in pencil, and they may start to change things just a little bit. And they may look at Cal and Stanford and SMU and say, we're going to go a different direction. So because we think that Clemson and Florida State will be leaving as soon to try and get into some other place. Miami wants out. Louisville wants to go. I mean, there's already people talking about restructuring. And anytime the talk of restructuring or realignment becomes a topic of conversation, those things are already in the works. You can't be speculating on certain things and just bringing it up on a whim. Clemson and Florida State want out. And eventually they're probably going to get their way. And if that happens, then Louisville and Miami will follow after that, and North Carolina, and next thing you know, Cal and Stanford and SMU are going to be going, can somebody please get Washington State and Oregon State on the phone and see if we can't, get together on something? And I think you're going to end up with the Big Ten, the SEC, and then you're going to have a second-tier conference in the Big 12. The ACC is going to get dismantled, maybe more slowly than the Pac-12 did, because the Pac-12 went pretty quick. Once USC and UCLA said that they were going, things really unraveled. And I think you're seeing a slow death of the ACC once it works its way through those, whether they decide to have that court case heard in Florida or North Carolina. If it's in Florida, then ESPN's business model becomes under intense scrutiny. And maybe they're looking for an exit door and saying, we want to renegotiate a lot of things too. They want to be a part of the play as to what the landscape of college football is going to be like. I was amused by the article when it says the current model is unsustainable. That's because those powers that be in college unsustained it with the NCAA.
It was sustainable for 40 years.
That was crazy. Like, well, we just can't keep the model. It's just not sustainable. You have been making sure that the NCAA through its own ineptitude, and Mark Emmert has been vulnerable to dismantling, and we will see that in the next 5 years.
It'll be fascinating to see what model sticks. I think this is the first one that we've heard that's been fleshed out. Beyond just guys like us drawing on a whiteboard and talking on a podcast. This one has some real weight behind it as far as the people who were involved, and they've gotten some meetings with conference commissioners. They've also, according to the article, had several meetings canceled because conferences like the Big Ten and the SEC didn't want to anger their TV partners by taking a meeting with the leaders of this organization. But I think it's the writing is on the wall, and the writing may be on the actual wall, like literally, but it's also figuratively on the wall that the end is coming for the structure as we know it. And whether it's just the ACC simply blowing up and we're left with three major conferences, or eventually even two major conferences, or if it goes in the other direction and comes down to something like this where you have really one conference with 80 teams that are broken into 7 or 8 divisions, something's going to change drastically that makes all of the conference realignment we've seen since Texas A&M jumped out of the Big 12 and Nebraska and Missouri and Colorado jumped out of the Big 12 and everything that's happened after that. Something's going to happen that makes all of that look like little morsels on the floor. It's going to be way bigger than that. And, it's intriguing to me from the Nebraska perspective to think about what one of those 10-team divisions might look like and the one that Nebraska's in. Is Nebraska ultimately destined to head back to a place where its division in college football is Kansas, Kansas State, Iowa State, Oklahoma State? I mean, like we could have the Big 8 all over again, plus a couple of Texas teams, or maybe an Arkansas or something like that.
Well, if I look at this from a TV partner's point of view, though, talking about the super conference with divisions, I would like to avoid the former Big Ten West as much as possible. You don't want to have a situation where you just have an unwatchable division. Everybody hates watching it. That's where I start looking at, if everybody's in the same boat, why not have a system of promotion and relegations similar to the European soccer model for your divisions? Maybe not every single season, but you look at what Nebraska high school football does, where every couple of seasons you get your districts switched up and you try to level the playing field that way by trying to say, you know what, it's not going to be a constant, this is your district. We're going to see what the past 3 years of results look like for you, and then we're going to reseed everybody and get new districts. You might be able to see a system like that in college football to avoid the hellhole that was the Big Ten West. You know what? Instead of having this division that has potentially become unwatchable because you have 4 different teams that are down right now and everybody loves punting, let's reclassify the divisions every couple of seasons. Or maybe you do it every single season to make sure we're going to have high-quality television every single year and make sure the good teams are playing the good teams, the bad teams are playing the bad teams, and there's going to be watchable games every single weekend.
So College Sports Tomorrow should get on the phone tomorrow with the Nebraska School Activities Association.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah. Yep.
I mean, okay, let's do it.
We've got another player, right? We've got chancellors, we have conference commissioners, we have owners of NBA teams, and let's for fun throw in the NSAA.
I've had other takes about the NSAA over the years, but that one. Hey, I mean, let's give them some love. They reclassify their divisions and try to even the playing field. Although I would say we could do a different podcast about this. I would say that they do it somewhat unsuccessfully.
Look, TV it can be TV is at the table, but I think TV can saber rattle and be mad if people take meetings or have these conversations, and they have the money, but the powers that be have the product. And if ESPN gets mad about something and Fox gets mad about something, there's Amazon and there are other conglomerates that are out there. And dare I say, there might be foreign entities that are out there. Go ask Phil Mickelson. And, there are places that have money that could change minds really, really quick and buy out contracts if they had to. We're talking about college football that, maybe the one or the 1B most popular sport in the country. And if the Big Ten and the SEC and somebody wants to get together, now, of course, my proposal 20 years ago was 64 teams. I think 70 and 80 is unmanageable, but that's just me. But I think that ESPN, especially if that court case is a big deal, with Florida State taking them to court in Florida because that's the Sunshine Laws in the Sunshine State. The ESPN wants to have that case heard in North Carolina, where the ACC headquarters are, and if it's in Florida, the ESPN books are going to be opened, and they're going to want to avoid that. So if there are teams in the ACC that want out and want to get someplace else, they're probably going to be able to do it. And if ESPN gets mad, then the people who have the footballs will take their football and go where the money is. And it may not be with ESPN, whose business model might look very different in 3 years. They're talking about that being a total streaming service and no longer on cable. So TV has its own realignment going on at the same time.
Last thing with this, with the conference commissioners right now and their ability to wield power and get a really sweet paycheck for everybody in their league. I mean, that's the balancing act that you got to figure out, where you can keep your power and you're not giving away too much power. It is wild kingdom, forgive me in here. But that's something I'm interested to see, how you can have your cake and eat it too, where you're still calling the shots as a conference, you're still making money for your schools, but you're in position to be in a playoff and then have some sort of oversight with NIL for sure, have some sort of oversight with rules, and make sure that the playing field's somewhat is, I guess, as level as it can be, or at least everyone's got the same sort of salary cap to deal with.
I think what a big motivation and really what's behind a lot of this process to revolutionize college football is that the alternative looks something like all of the NCAA and ultimately the teams under the NCAA umbrella getting sued back into the 19th century. There's not a lot of upside to sticking with the product as it is because there are so many legal challenges. And I think if you're working at those offices in Indianapolis today, and you have anything to do with football or really any sport, because it all trickles down, you kind of have to feel like the walls are caving in to some degree, and there needs to be a way, whether it comes out of that office or it comes from some outside place, for them to be able to get out from underneath this cloud that is getting closer and closer to just like wrecking the whole thing. Like it is somewhat of an unsustainable model with as many legal challenges and governmental challenges as they appear to be facing over the next few years.
Greg Byrne's not wrong when, after Nick Saban had his comments as to one of the reasons why he got out of coaching, and Greg Byrne took a lot of heat for, look, this is going to have an impact on, the Olympic sports on their campus. And people are saying, well, yeah, you're paying your football coaches, X amount of millions of dollars, and your assistant coaches X amount of millions of dollars. Well, if you're going to bring athletes under the salary structure of a university, and you're going to be playing in some type of super league where there may be, certain rules and parameters for salaries and budgets and roster sizes, it is entirely possible that some of those other sports that people love around here and around the country are going to be in danger of being let go, because you've got to pay the athlete. You're going to have union issues, all of that stuff. And so Byrne took a lot of heat for that, but I think he's absolutely right. Even though football demands, the budgets at the highest level, and Nebraska wants to be in that game. There might be some schools, I think maybe we talked about this before, that say, you know what, we'll take the check, but we're just not going to invest in our program, like everybody else is. So if we get relegated, we get relegated next up and can have our spot. But there's going to be Olympic sports that are going to be in peril. in the near future, I think.
There's some irony in that comment coming from from Greg Byrne, because if anyone's going to be okay through all of this, it's Alabama.
Right.
And look who's got their men's basketball team in the Final Four this weekend. In addition to, of course, having a dominant run that's maybe coming to an end, but Alabama's still going to be a huge player in college football with Kalen DeBoer as coach. And, I took a look at the college baseball rankings this week as Nebraska snuck in at number 24. And who do you see up there in the top 15? Oh, it's Alabama. Mm-hmm. So the Crimson Tide, they're going to be just fine. Greg Byrne speaks the truth, but the truth hurts a lot more if you're not Alabama.
Right. And I think maybe he was speaking for, he was mentioning Alabama. We're going to have to take a look at our program in this. I think he's speaking also for, all the other programs around that. This is going to have an impact across collegiate athletics. And it might be also saying, sorry, we're still going to be all in and we're still going to pay what we're going to pay, but just letting everybody around the country know that he's the one who threw that out there, that other places are going to have to deal with it.
I told you this was going to be bad.
I told you this was going to be bad for Kansas State and Iowa State.
But
duck and cover.
But you also look at it like Bama's got it figured out, though. Like, why is their basketball program great and their baseball program great? At its heart, it's because their football program's great. Like, your football program is great. That leads to more support from the boosters for other programs that you had. I think one of the points on Troy Dannen's resume is he added a sailing team at Tulane. It's like, well, he got the football team right first, and then you had independent donors out there that are willing to go out and spend the money on getting I think it was a sailing team. I think that's the sport. I think I have that one right. But, like, Bama's got it figured out.
Coming soon to the Vanny Center.
Oh, like the old Roman Coliseum where they would go flood the Coliseum and have the ship battles? That'd be sick.
They're going to sail down Salt Creek.
Wow. The Nebraska Navy coming your way. That's Mitch Sherman with The Athletic. It's Bill Doleman, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, episode 36 of the Average Joe Sports Show. Spotify and iTunes, where you can download the show. The Average Joe Sports Show on YouTube for the video portion. The AJ Sports Pod. Find us on Twitter. Guys, we've hit this 80-team Super League topic. We dove into vacation. I want to get into, before spring football, thoughts with Nebraska. A big day tomorrow with some quarterbacks and offensive minds meeting the meeting. I want to get the reaction to Scott Frost speaking for the first time in 18 months. Sat down with Dennis Dodd, national writer with CBS Sports, well-respected college football guy, and the article didn't go super in-depth. There wasn't a lot of remembrance by Frost towards Nebraska. Didn't want to really get into Nebraska, but the guy's sick right now. He's not coaching. We're talking 2 coaching cycles, 52 or 54 jobs open at one point, and he's, I don't know. I don't want to say he's bored. He's getting to hang out with his kids, which is great, but Frosty wants to get back into coaching, and I'm just wondering what that timeline looks like and who's next for a guy that's wondering what's next.
I'm also wondering why Mitch didn't make a stop in Scottsdale on his Southwest road trip. Like, it was right there.
It was like 4 hours away. Flagstaff is farther away from Scottsdale than you might think. I was closer to many destinations in New Mexico and Utah than I was to Scottsdale. I wanted to stay up in northern Arizona. University of Northern Arizona, cool campus. Got to drive by it.
That was was that the home of Chancellor Brewington? Is that correct?
At one time.
I'm sorry. I think it's Northern Arizona University. But yeah, I think Chancellor Brewington made a stop through there. Cool guy, and he was I like that play they ran for him at the goal line. So
one.
Yeah, well, they did it a couple times, man. He brought the wood. I don't know what to say about the Frost article. There wasn't much meat on the bone. He wants to coach again, which that's good. He's a coach. He should coach again. It's in his blood. But the reality is, the longer that he stays out, the more difficult it's going to be for him to get back in, and to get the kind of position that it fits for him. So you might have to make a leap and accept something if you're Scott Frost that doesn't necessarily like fit on your fit with your idea of, you know, where you should go after being a head coach at UCF, being a head coach at Nebraska. And, you know, I think he recognized that in the article. He talked about the ladder that he climbed to go from grad assistant to position coach to coordinator to head coach. And you know, it's just a matter of where has he fallen? Where does he come down now? And who does he find as an athletic director or as a head coach, if he's to go back as an assistant or coordinator? Who does he find that wants to throw him that lifeline? He said that he's dying to get back into it, but it didn't necessarily read like that to me based on the amount of time that's passed and the number of jobs that have been open since he was let go at Nebraska.
Well, I don't want to throw this around, like, as somebody who's not a print journalist, I don't want to throw this around too lightly, but what Dennis Dodd wrote today, I guess I should say, we're recording this on a Wednesday. He released it earlier today as we sit here talking. It was a puff piece. It was absolutely like there was no real, at least from what was written, digging into what went wrong at Nebraska, what he'd improve upon with himself based on what he learned at Nebraska. There wasn't much of that. It wasn't any hard questions. And again, as a non-print journalist, I mean, I'm not even a journalist, like, I don't want to throw that around and call it a puff piece because that's not my lane. I'd prefer to stay out of my lane, but it was not an article that impressed me in terms of journalistically diving into it and really trying to get to the heart of Scott Frost and his issues at Nebraska and what he's worked on in order to prove himself that he's ready for another job.
Is he going to be able to answer the why?
Yes.
To an athletic director?
Yep.
In a satisfactory manner to get that second chance. And he didn't do it in the article really clearly, or at least it wasn't in the article. Didn't want to talk about Nebraska, which taking the high road there, probably from his perspective.
Yeah.
So, okay, but you're going to go, all right, Scott, let's talk here. You've got a really good eye for some quarterbacks in your time, you could argue. You've been a really good offensive coordinator. Tell me why you're going to be a better head coach this time around. Are you going to be able to communicate? Are you going to be able to put a staff together that's ready to play big time and coach big time college football? And are you going to be able to communicate with all parties and lead a program?
You know, I don't know that he wants to be a head coach. At least not a head coach. Yeah, at least not a head coach in the way that head coaches are required to be today. One thing I did take out of the story, out of the interview, is that he loves coaching players, and he loves seeing an 18-year-old kid turn into a 22-year-old man, was to paraphrase what he said. He doesn't love the transfer portal. He doesn't love the NIL piece. He doesn't love everything that goes into the recruiting process today. So where does that leave him? Because if you're going to be a head coach today, and this, even more so than in 2017 when he came to Nebraska, you are required to do a lot more than coach. So possibly the best fit for him in lining up with what his priorities are, where he wants to be, and he can be picky. He's earned the ability to be picky because of the contract that he signed with Nebraska back 7 years ago. He might just end up taking a job as a quarterback's coach or maybe an offensive coordinator and be very happy in that role.
My 2 cents on the article was I waded through it and my ankles didn't get wet. I don't think there was a whole lot of depth to it at all. I think you'll get more out of Dennis Dodd making the radio podcast circuit than you will in reading the article, because he will, it's kind of the off season at spring football. Dennis is an accomplished college football writer and legendary, if you want to throw that around. But I think he'll get more attention for the when he does interviews than what we got out of the article. I think Scott Frost should not be thinking in the head coaching realm. I look at Bill O'Brien. It was disastrous for him with the Houston Texans for the most part. He rebuilt his reputation in his career in the Nick Saban rehab school of coaching, and was there for a while. And was he wildly popular there as an offensive coordinator? No, not really, but it got him an opportunity to go to Ohio State for a month, and now he's the head coach at Boston College. And for Bill O'Brien at this stage of his career, which is probably in his mid to later 50s, maybe that's the final destination job for a guy like that. I think for Scott Frost, I think going the assistant coaching route at a bigger school or a coordinator position at a smaller school would be healthy for him if he truly wants to get back into the game and coach, because he does not want to do all the ancillary stuff. And I don't think he wants to have to figure out NIL and transfer portal and not just recruit high school kids, recruit kids on other teams who are contemplating the portal. And we've figured out NIL for these high school kids. Now we got to figure out NIL for a guy transferring for the second or third time. I don't think he wants to do any of that. And I think, going back to Mitch, where you were, I think a place like Northern Arizona would be the ideal place for Scott Frost to hang his whistle, and maybe forever at a school like that, maybe a Mountain West. But there will be an athletic director who will take a shot on Scott Frost if he wants to be head coach. I'm not sure that's what he wants to do, and maybe he's trying to talk himself into being a head coach. I thought one of the things I did find interesting in the article is when he said, "I knew the trajectory I was on." Does that mean you thought you were going to go from Nebraska to the NFL and be a head coach? That's kind of what I read there, and I'm thinking you don't want to be the head coach in college. The NFL is not making young men into grown men. Those guys are, as Matt Rule found, they are on their own agendas, and I don't think Scott wants to deal with that either. And I was kind of surprised by that comment. I think NAU or something like that, it would be the perfect place for him.
Frost and Flagstaff. We'll have to let that marinate. I think, and my last thought on this, I think to respond to your statement there about his trajectory, Bill, I think that going back to his time when he started to climb the ladder at Oregon and head coaching looked like it was in his future, he saw himself as the Nebraska head coach. And I think that in his mind, because of how much he valued working with 18 to 22-year-olds, that's where he saw the end of his climb. Perhaps I misread it, and he was talking NFL, but I think for him, in his early stages of that climb and coaching, he saw the Nebraska job as the pinnacle for him as a coach.
We'll wind down and hit some spring football. Defensive day early in the week for Nebraska. Tony White, Coach Knighton speaking, and a handful of players. We are on the eve of quarterback day, quarterback coach and offensive coordinator day tomorrow with Nebraska. And Mitch, I know you've circled a handful of players to watch this spring in your latest story with The Athletic. I'm pretty intrigued here with tomorrow, and just, all right, what's the update? How are things going with this quarterback room, with the offense? And I know they're putting out social media hits on Team Gold Knights, Team Rattlesnake Boys, I think, and then Team Bug
Eaters.
Yeah, so that's all three of them, but should be pretty informative tomorrow.
Yeah, we get one quarterback from each one of those teams on Thursday's media availability. Daniel Kalen, Heinrich Harburg, and who's the other one? Dylan Raiola. Yes. Tomorrow, I say tomorrow, Thursday at Memorial Stadium at the Hawks Championship Center, where the interviews are conducted, I think we can assume is going to be the most attended press conference of the spring up until, and maybe including the April 27th red-white game, because we're going to get the chance to hear from, for the first time as a Nebraska football player, the most touted recruit perhaps ever in Nebraska football history, which is quite a mouthful, but it's the the fact with Dylan Raiola. Certainly the most heralded recruit of the last 20 years, the player who has been brought in to save the program. I'll put that label on him totally unfairly, but that's the task, and that's the expectation for a lot of people with what this freshman is asked to do. So it'll be fascinating to see how he handles the spotlight. And I've talked to Dylan in one-on-one scenarios where he showed a great ability to be mature and is thorough in his answers and thoughtful with the way that he talks about the game. I'm really interested to see what it looks like when he's got 25 TV cameras pointed at him and 30 people out there just begging to be able to ask him a question with laptops and notebooks in front of them, because it's a totally different kind of environment to be in than, standing there with one person answering questions. And it's relevant because pressure is going to be a big part of what he faces here over the next several months. And it's different to have a 280-pound defensive end who runs a 4.4 40 coming at you off the edge against Ohio State in the Horseshoe in October than it is to talk to a bunch of out-of-shape media people. But it's still pressure. And there's still something to it that we'll be able to, I think, gain and learn about Dylan and his ability to step up in the moment in just the way that he presents himself. Because, like it or not, whether the coaches like it or the administration likes it, people are going to see him as the face of the program and the future of the program. So it's a big moment for him to go in front of the cameras for the first time. And I assume he'll do well, but everyone's going to hang on every word and probably dissect all of how it goes.
Mitch, you didn't want to compare a media session to an Ohio State defensive end, but let's not sell the full court press from Mitch Sherman and Sam McEwen and Steve Sipple and the likes of the journalism crew. Let's not sell that short. That full court press can be pretty significant.
I mean, I don't think it's going to be too hard hitting in his first press conference in spring practice. Different story, if he goes out and loses a couple of games in October as a junior, when Nebraska's expected to win 10 games and in the climb under Matt Rule. I mean, every quarterback who's come through Nebraska, and my time around these guys goes back to Tommy Frazier. Yeah, that's Tommy's sophomore year was my first year in college, and I've been around all of the quarterbacks who've gone up on that stage since him. And really, with the exception of Zach Taylor, and you see where he is today and what he does today for his career, all of them have had to kind of get a little hot under the collar. There's been tension. There's been, some bit of I think anxiety on the part of all of those quarterbacks when they've kind of faced the music. And it doesn't happen in spring practice of your freshman year. But at some point, whether you're playing for a team that wins a national championship or you're playing for a team that's struggling to get to 6-6, it always kind of comes to a head. They're always the player, fairly or unfairly, who has to speak for the team and take the heat after every game and answer to why the defense was bad when you had nothing to do with it. So it's a big part of the Nebraska football experience when you're a quarterback is how you present yourself to the public, and this will be the first opportunity for him to do that.
Bottom line is he's going to get the opportunity, and they wouldn't put him out there if Matt Rule didn't want him to get that experience. And what better way to do it than in spring ball? I think it'd be very easy for them, and I wouldn't blame them if they said, you know what, we know you're heralded, and Danny Kalin, we know you're a great young man, and you understand what the picture looks like for the coming fall. Heinrich, you're a Nebraska kid who understands, what's going on too. But let's just put this off until fall, okay? They're putting them out there because Matt Rule wants him to get the experience, especially for Dylan Raiola, get the experience, be in front of 25 cameras. It won't be the Washington press corps under Donald Trump, right? It'll be well-meaning, well-behaved, and well-framed at a very low-key, low-pressure time for him to answer questions. It's not going to be Adrian Martinez when things are going wrong. And look, Martinez, endured that, the scrutiny of what was going on with Nebraska football for his entire time here. And it got worse after his freshman season because it never got better. And for Dylan, this is all part of, his growth process, and Matt Rule understands it. Otherwise, he wouldn't put him out there.
Yeah, that's not Matt Rule's style to hide those guys and let them, take a pass with this obligation that they have. He's ready to throw them to the fire, and he lets the freshmen answer questions just like he does the upperclassmen. There are plenty of coaches out there who don't make their freshmen available to the media, and good on Matt Rule for doing it, because freshmen are every bit as much is expected of them when they're playing on a Saturday in the fall as a guy who's 22 or 23 years old. So, it only makes sense to hold them to the same standard off the field, and this is the start of it with these two young quarterbacks.
I don't think there's any question he's going to handle himself very well. And so I think Danny Kaelin will impress everybody by how he handles himself, and Heinrich Hartberg will say all of the right things. It's well-timed. Going back to the very beginning of our conversation tonight, the storm clouds, for the most part, have passed through Nebraska athletics. This has been a low-key spring to this point. I think the most remarkable thing of spring ball so far is that Cam Lenhart looks like he's a member of the coaching staff. Nothing has gotten more attention in the last week and a half than, my God, that guy looks like he's 35 years old, and he conducts himself like he's an assistant coach who's getting ready to move on to his first head coaching job. I could not believe how mature he looks and how he carries himself. And that was maybe the biggest revelation of spring ball to this point. And I think whatever those guys say tomorrow will be well versed and well said.
I'm telling you, with Cam Lenhart, it's the stash. It's that slight stash he's got going on. Makes you look older. It's a good look. I'm a big fan of the stash.
Cam Lenhart was looking out at the media while people were asking questions like, you need to hurry up and get these questions out of the way because I got to get home and make lunch for my 4 kids and mow the lawn, clean out the attic. I got stuff to do today, guys. So
the minivan needs the oil changed.
He's got to go till his garden for sure.
No. So.
Well, you know what? He was at IMG, just to wrap on Lenhart, and he made a point saying, look, man, I've been on my own for a while. I got responsibilities to take care of. I got to take care of myself. And he really referenced the time management part. So
he was impressive.
He's going to be like when he's a senior. When he's a senior, he's just going to take the podium right after the game, and you can have the head coach go after him.
Coach, I got this. I
like it. Well, that'll wind down episode 36 here of the Average Joe Sports Show. Mitch, the floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, bittersweet moment for me. So I'm going to be taking a step back from the Average Joes. I'll always be an Average Joe at heart, but I've got another project that I'm working on, and I'll let people learn more about that in the next week as we get into the second week of April. But for all 36 of these episodes, it's been awesome to hang with you guys once or twice a week, and making this break here after basketball season's over. We didn't even talk about Nebraska basketball and its exit from the first round of the NCAA tournament, but they didn't get the job done as far as ending the streak, and I didn't get the job done of making it a full year as a permanent co-host with you guys. But I will be back, and I will be around, and I do want to come on your show as a guest when you're happy enough to when you're nice enough to have me. So it's not farewell, but it's it's a great opportunity for me to go do something else that I'm excited about, and I'll let everybody know about it in a short period of time.
And we're happy for you. I know we will find somebody just as average as you are. And
Yes. And you can still find me at the Athletic doing everything that I've been doing for the last 5 years.
and you are one of the best writers that's out there, and you're a great friend, and you've been great for us. And I'm glad that we were able to relaunch the Average Joe Sports Show with you, and the microphone, and will always be available to you on the show.
You guys just keep being average.
I don't have much to add besides that. Go for it, Schmidt. The floor is yours.
I was just going to say, when the next time we'll catch up with Mitch, we'll do an in-home visit to Mitch's bar.
Fine. We can do a 4-person shot, but instead of needing the separate cameras, we'll do it on one camera.
Yeah,
That's good.
we wish you well, Mitch.
Do you have
We'll see you again here.
We can get the
I'll
shot
see you guys
at
soon.
Mitch's place next time we see him, but we'll get that rocking. Mitch, appreciate everything you've done for us. It's been a lot of fun for the past year, so wish you all the best for your next adventure.